Welcome back to the Always Aggressive podcast. I'm Cory. That's Tanner and Coach Tony Ersland joining us as always. Guys, we're really going to, we're going to go quite a bit shorter than we did last week when we clocked in at just under an hour. But I think it was the best show we've done in a long time. So great to,
well worth it.
So great to hear from those guys and the like. We'll talk a little bit about a little bit of fun stuff when it comes to the recruiting content. We'll get to that at the end of the show, but let's just dig right in. We closed out last week talking about the competition in Omaha, the competitions in Omaha. It was a nice week for some Boilermakers, Tony, and you know, you being you, I'm sure there were, you know, some fleas and some warts that were very apparent that you can't.
Never satisfied. He's never satisfied, guys.
Yeah, true. No doubt. Never satisfied, but still, you know, some good results. We'll talk about those, but general takeaways from the competition.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, just excited for the guys because we got to wrestle, right? I mean, you just always want to be thankful about the opportunity to compete, and in this year of these strange ups and downs, and you know where we're at now, kind of even with numbers rising, and you know it's still 2020, but really thankful that these guys got a chance to go test themselves and compete and see where they're at. And so, like you said, you know, there's always things that we want to do better, but man, I have no doubt that their opportunity to compete will help them as we move forward. And so that's the part that I'm just really excited about for them.
You know, getting into, we'll obviously get into some more of the specific guys here as we move along, but sent 10 guys, 4 guys ended up on the podium, 3 at U23, 1 at juniors. You know, talk about, and we did this in the fact, like, you know, this was a freestyle event. Because of the uncertainty of everything going on, we weren't necessarily training exclusively freestyle. So there was some of that wrinkle to it, but you know, how did you feel about just the overall performance of the group and, you know, guys achieving and their kind of win-loss totals?
Well, I think, you know, results-wise, there was some really good results. And in terms of performance, right? I mean, that equals wins quite often. Not always, but it does. You know, as we go through it, you know, Thomas Penola looked really, really strong. You know, coming down from heavyweight, 297. You want to kind of see. Well, actually, it's 92 kilo, but you know, it's the weight class. A lot of the guys he's going to see at 197 pounds. You know, just how he looked competing and kind of the evolution of his skill sets. We saw him try a few new things that we've been working on, so that was good to see. He's taking the practice room into his matches and had, you know, a couple wins over what guys were, you know, named All-Americans in the past. And those are guys he's going to see, you know, again, this at the NCAA tournament. So I feel really good about where he's at. Clearly, you know, being 4th, we've still got things to work on. You know, he had the same loss to the same guy twice. And although he made a few adjustments, you know, there's some more adjustments to be made and where he kind of was short and why he was short. So, but hey, he left it all out there and showed, you know, he's bringing some of the practice room to his competition, you know, at a different weight class, albeit, right?
Yeah, let's stay on Thomas for a minute there, just because you brought him up. And, you know, he's a guy, like you said, he spent last year at heavyweight. He made a team sacrifice. Bruner came back to the lineup. Thomas bumped up to heavyweight. And, you know, the reality for Tom is he had to really adjust his style to compete effectively at heavyweight. You know, it took him probably 4, 5, 6 matches of taking some lumps against some guys before he kind of settled in there. And now he's got to throw some of that out and kind of like hit the reset button. What about that do you feel like there were any ill effects of moving up last year that he's trying to shake? Because, you know, he's an unknown at 97. These guys, you know, he's unranked across the board. But we know he's got some pretty good pedigree, and he was able to show that off this weekend.
Yeah, no, I don't look at it as any ill effects. I mean, okay, one negative, if you want to call it a negative, it's just tactically how you wrestle heavies. You're not going underneath, you know, as much, right? Your attack rate's looks a little different at heavy sometimes than it does at these other weight classes. And so, yes, we've talked with him about keeping his attack rate at a higher pace. You know, when he was an undersized heavy, he's not going underneath nearly as much or attacking maybe quite as often. So there's been an emphasis in making sure that we keep that attack rate higher. But I honestly feel like quite the opposite in terms of what that's done for him, because he had to get big and strong to fill in. So he went, several months last year without cutting weight. He added on a lot of lean mass. And even now, as he's kind of cut down, it's just been taking the fat off his body, and he looks really good at the weight. He's a very strong physical kid for the weight. And that, part of that's because last year he got to really take an opportunity to get big and strong, and he's retained that lean mass because, he's not lazy with his diet. He's brought it down the right way. He's made weight the right way. So he looks really good. And then the other part, and we've talked about this sometimes, is, he's battle tested. He's been in a lot of tough battles, a lot of tight matches. He's learned how to fight his tail off and find ways to win close matches. So, man, I think, you've got a kid who's been in the battles and is better physically prepared. And as I mentioned before, even technically now we're seeing some more skill sets, that we've been working on kind of make its way into competition. So to me, it's been win-win,
I got to think right now the belief is there with him. Like you said, he's battle tested. He's been in the wars. He knows that he can go toe to toe with anybody.
Yeah, no doubt. And he should, and I tell, we've got some exceptional, exceptionally hard workers on our team, and they sacrifice in all ways: diet, sleep, training, technique. And Tom, Thomas is one of those guys. So I tell him all the time, like, there should be nobody more confident than you going out there. But what I do also like about him, he's a very unassuming kid. There's no ego or anything that comes along with that. He's just a very coachable kid. He's always trying to find ways to be better. And so, that's the guy you want to work with.
Before we move on from Thomas, I remember back in they're all running together. 2018, when Burrough went to Worlds, right? World team competition. Thomas was one of the guys he singled out as, making that sacrifice in the run up to be a freestyle training partner. Thomas's true freshman year, I think, and he was redshirting or however that worked out. But so him having success in the freestyle mat shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, given his work rate, obviously, his habits, and he's got years of experience. I know Burrough really appreciated that and made a point to tell anybody who would listen back then.
Absolutely. And they made each other better. I have no doubt that Thomas is where he's at because of those opportunities he's had to scrap with Burrough and be pushed.
Yeah. Well, there is still a missing persons report out for Thomas Penola's neck. I'm not sure where it went, but it's no longer there. Some great wins over some good guys. Ended up finishing fourth at the U23 division at 92 kilos, as Coach said. Another guy, let's move right to his training partner. Our top finisher on the weekend, Max Lyon, went out and finished second at 86 kilos. And, his only loss was to the outstanding wrestler of the U23s, Taylor Lujan of formerly of Northern Iowa. The guy's a graduate. He was the number one seed last year at 184. So it is not as though he went out and lost to somebody who was not good. But really an impressive weekend for Max.
Yeah, and another guy who is taking some different things from training to competition. He had the little pick a couple times, the ankle pick, right? He's been working hard on that. So it was nice to see him have the confidence to take that fourth. I know that, he feels really good about kind of some hand fighting in different attacks that he was able to take into competition. Disappointed in that, if you watch the match in the finals, how we lost in the trap arm, we let Lujan kind of get in the leg in and then hip over to the trap arm and end the match. And so from that standpoint, we got snookered. And we got to go back to work on that parterre. But with the college season staring us in the face here coming up as well, that'll probably have to wait till next spring. But I know, Max isn't happy about how it ended, but he competed really well. He got out there. Like I said, he took some things from the practice room that you're looking for, right? When you have an extended time off, that's why I'm kind of harping on this, if you notice in the theme. But you're just seeing some things that will help him down the road because now – he's gaining confidence and executing in different ways. But yeah, great weekend for him.
You talked about, and you've talked about this with both Max and Tom, and the fact that talked about new techniques and new attacks that they've been working on. From year to year, how much, I'm sure this answer is going to be a little different for everybody, but like from year to year, how much emphasis is placed on adding things to the repertoire and developing new techniques and new scoring holds?
Yeah, I think that you always have to be adding to kind of your skill set. Now, you have to be, in my opinion, this is my humble opinion here, you can't add or should be careful about adding like 10 or 12 new skills, right? Like, the phrase, jack of all trades, master of none really applies in my opinion. And so it's not like we try to add 10 skill sets every year, but man, it's refining and adding those little things, those little wrinkles to what you already do really well, whether it's a different couple of setups to get to that leg attack you have, or even just adding another attack maybe to the other side of the body or whatever it may be. So yes, I think you got to continually want to evolve and work on that. You love guys who love to kind of play with stuff. Those guys get me excited. They're not afraid to come in and just play with different things and learn. But you just got to be careful that you're ready and you're confident before you take it out to the, in front of the people.
Absolutely. Our final place winner at U23. It's funny, these guys all live together. Your sense of
I know,
but
it's the same house.
It is the same house. Parker Filius went out and got 5th place at 65 kilos. Took the long road. Lost in his first match and had to fight all the way back into the placing rounds, and actually ended up avenging his first round loss. So
Yep.
Pretty a solid show of mental fortitude for Parker, in addition to whatever he did on the mat.
Yeah, nice to see. He's a warrior. Everything we said about Thomas, just carry that across the board to that house, right? Everybody who lives in that house is the same way. They've all got that discipline and that mindset, and they do a lot of these things right, and they should all be very confident in what they do. So I just want to, let me rubber stamp that for, ditto for all of those guys. The thing with Parker, he's very familiar with this guy. And I think, he got into that 2-2 match. He was up 2-0 and just kind of sat on it too much, wanted 2-0 to hold up. And in freestyle, for anybody who's not familiar, last score, even if you're tied, wins, all else being equal. And so you can't really say I'm ahead, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You've got to kind of try to really still build your lead deeper into that match, and so was disappointed that he didn't really try to go out and turn it into more of a slugfest with more points, because I think that favors him. And he was able to do that if you go back and watch the second match and even the number of points that were scored, that turned in his favor, and it got really lopsided, from a score point in his favor. And so I think hopefully he's trusting that, hey, one takedown's not going to beat you. Sometimes we get in these matches and we're trying to just win, and that goes against everything we talk about. Yes, we're gonna try to win, but man, it's that happens as a product of just being engaged for the 6 minutes. And when you shut down and you still have several minutes to wrestle, that's not being engaged. So I was proud to see him really respond the way he did, come back through the bracket strong. You knew he would. He gets better the deeper in the tournament it goes. And so I think he got a lot out of that. And hopefully it showed him again the difference of when he gets in that kind of just a slowed down tactical match, as well as when I open up and I force people to wrestle harder, that favors me. And then he can pull confidence from that. So, it was, like I said, proud of him for placing and being a warrior. But hopefully he'll understand why things went the way they did and how we can flip it. The other thing I will mention, though, because I know we're talking about placers in that division, people who followed the bracket, Parker actually knocked out Alec White. I thought,
Tough draw.
Right? Like, that's a shame.
It's always the worst.
Man.
Guys who know each other well, and if you watch that match, Alec was right there to win. It's a tricky call even, right? That goes one way or the other. And they're teammates, so they know each other really well.
Yeah.
But I did think Alec represented himself well. He was out after Midlands last year and didn't get a wrestle. So he really had an extended layoff.
Yeah.
So, props to him for coming out and really Like I said, he represented himself well. Certainly, obviously things to work on for all these guys, but excited for Alex's return and how he looked. It was just a shame it had to come down to your teammate, knocking you out of the tournament in that kind of way.
Nothing like a 9-hour van trip to go wrestle a guy that you wrestle every day in the practice.
Every day of the room.
Right.
That's always a good thing. Makes you feel good all around. You talk. We didn't talk about this a lot. U23 and juniors, for people who don't know, they do the international weights in kilos. There was a weight allowance, and it was day before weigh-ins. The guys all weighed in on Friday to wrestle Saturday and Sunday. So some guys, by the time Sunday afternoon rolled around, were well out of their weight class.
Some big dudes.
How did our guys kind of, like, from a weight standpoint, like, how did they prepare across the board to, choose their weight and then wrestle at it, as far as that's concerned?
Well, I think it's different for everybody. I'm not just going to give you a hard and fast rule,
sure.
On things. Most guys had their weight very close to where they needed to be. They were disciplined and they did a good job. You look at Thomas, he could have maybe been up at, a weight up, a little bigger weight, but his weight was really good. 92 kilos seemed to fit him really well. So that's where he went. Max, that's not as much of a cut. Because remember, that, as you may have mentioned, they got 2 kilo, which is 4.4 pounds from the weight. So again, you had a little bit of, weight given to you. So those guys, Parker, Max, Penola, really most guys did not have to cut a ton of weight. If anything, there was probably a couple guys that we could have brought down a weight under, but here's where I balance things out too. I'll use a kid like Gerrit Nijenhuis. He could have, especially with the 4 kilo or the 2 kilos, gone down a weight class, okay, and been right there as well. But, when you've got school going on right now and you've got all these other things with what the challenges that 2020 can present, there's decisions that we make that I say, hey, this is the best decision for these next couple weeks, based on, your training situation, school, what's going on. There's just a lot of things to consider, and that's how we kind of balance that out with the kids. You know what I mean? Yeah,
and it was interesting because you saw some other guys at some other weights and some others. There were a few guys sprinkled in here and there, maybe a post grad or something that cut a bunch of weight and ended up being huge.
Well,
by the end of
if you look at Max Lyon beat Caffey, right? And Max and Cam are they know each other well from Big Ten, Michigan State guy for those that maybe don't know. But
sure.
He was Big Ten finalist last year, 184. Him and Max had split matches in the past. Right now he's ranked at 197 pounds. Mm-hmm. He's obviously down a weight because of the day before weigh-in. So, is he going to be up? Looks that way. I guess we'll see. But you see some of that when you get that day before weigh-in in a 2 kilo allowance. Sure. You see some guys moving up and down and around. So it's not necessarily who you're going to see wrestling. I don't know if you're going to see Caffey and Max wrestling each other this season or not. But regardless, a guy who's ranked, top 8, I think, in the country at the weight, Big Ten finalist, a good opponent. So that's a nice win for Max.
Yeah, no, I saw the same thing with, former Minnesota Golden Gopher Mitch McKee wrestled at 61 kilo when he spent last year at 141 and probably would have been a more natural fit at 65 with Parker. He cut the weight and got down to, because Parker had even joked with me about, with the weight allowance, he's like, I could go 61 day before weigh-in, he kind of like, he was a little tongue in cheek and hemmed and haw about it. And so I thought it was interesting just to see who decided to wrestle at what weights. And it was more about competing and feeling good than it was about, where can I gain the biggest competitive advantage?
Well, and that doesn't always equal out competitive advantage either, right? I mean, for some kids it does. Don't get me wrong. And this is where the individual discussions with each young man is key, because some guys, it's about finding the best weight class for them and understanding, where they're going to do their best wrestling. Occasionally, though, if you cut a guy down hard, you take the fight out of him as much. Like on a 1 hour weigh-in, say for a dual meet against really high level, you might lose the best part of the kid. The best part of that kid is he's going to wrestle hard with pace. And if he cuts really hard, you lose some of that. okay, you might lose the best part of the kid. So, but some guys also, like I said, this is where I leave it open. Some guys, they know that, they want to be big for the weight, and that's their best weight in their competition for their style and how they compete and wrestle. So it really does kind of come down to evaluating each kid and how they handle the cut, and then how they'll consequently perform.
Yeah. You brought up Gerrit Nijenhuis. Let's swing his way. 7th place, 79 kilos down in the junior division. Wrestled pretty well. Had some tough opponents. It was a tough bracket. The juniors division, for those that don't know, is 20 and under. And so it represents a kind of an interesting situation where you'll have some guys who have spent a year or even 2 years in college already and have been in that college environment and that college weight room. And then, you even had a whole bunch of high school kids. With Gerrit kind of, obviously landing in the middle. He's had the summer and this fall to train in a college room, but has no college experience yet. And so it was those juniors divisions across the board were interesting in that way, with that mix of college and high school standouts.
No doubt. Some good depth there in terms of talent, right? I mean, you don't know what these guys are going to be in college yet, but in terms of talent, some really good depth in those brackets. I thought, Gerrit should take a lot from this tournament, both in what to do and what not to do. Like any young man, you're learning how you have to do things day to day. And as you make a jump up in levels, what winning looks like, in terms of position, in terms of pace, different things like that. So I think it's something he's going to pull a lot from. He didn't feel great in his first match. I'm not going to say anything that's we haven't discussed about. So we go back and we look at the warm up right before he goes out. What was he doing? And it turns out that, he wasn't really getting his legs going, firing up, his heart rate kind of, you get out there and your heart rate shoots up and your legs feel sluggish. And let's say this, because I tell him and any guy, how you feel has very little to do with this. Nobody's going to care how you feel, your opponent especially. So we're not going to get in tune, but you've got to kind of get that body going and get your mind going, in the right way. And so, I think after the first match where he was sluggish, Coach Shop got with him on some things to do warm-up wise right before you go out, and looked much better in general. As far as pace and competing and those things. And I know he probably felt better too, even though I said that doesn't really matter. So, it's a learning process for those young guys. Okay. Trey Cruz, Hayden Lowry were in those brackets as well. And so, Gerrit obviously placing, nice, good honor for him. You hope he really learned though from that experience about what has to be done, adjustments within a match that have to be made. There's just always stuff, you can scout opponents, but man, when you go out and wrestle and the first starts flying, you got to make those adjustments. And I can't call timeout and we can't draw the play up on the board, right? We're not going to do, you got to adjust quickly. And so, understanding those things, as well as, like I said, preparation as far as right up till the moment you go out, what needs to happen to have your mind ready and your body was key for those guys. And so, I'm very hopeful that they'll have learned a ton that they can take forward that's going to help them in their college career as well as future, national championship events.
With a kid like Gerrit, who, hasn't competed collegiately yet, his first outing as a Boilermaker being in freestyle, how much did you see from him that you think will directly translate to this season potentially?
I think you would hope that you see a lot of it. In terms of just competing, you want to translate, hey, the biggest thing is to compete and to compete hard. That's the thing you've got to learn, because these guys, and listen, I talked to, one of our signees, Ben Venadia, just last night about his turn. He was out there, he's still in high school and he's out there competing. And, and so I'll kind of use his story as well. But it applies to Gerrit and all these young guys. He went out and he said, hey, I felt like I had some good opportunities to score and my stuff would work, but sustaining that is what, I got caught on my heels a little bit. I've got to get used to that pace and that position, where, I'm progressing and I'm getting pushed in that way. So he's trying to find situations within his high school rooms now and the way he's training to make that next jump, because he's like, oh, I felt it now. I know what it feels like. And clearly I've got to kind of raise my level in terms of my pace and my intensity in some of those situations. And it's the same for all of those young guys, but it's different for each kid, right? Like Gerrit has, great leg attacker, good scrambler, good on top, folk style wise with, different things, can turn and pin, but, hand fighting where a push out is a big, objective. He's got to work on some of those things, not that we're going to just make him a hand fighter, but hey, like Jordan Burrough, you got to understand how to control the mat, how not to get pushed out, how not to give up easy points. And those are things that all of these young guys have to learn, because guys who have been in a college room for extended periods of time understand more about position and kind of pace, when the pressure needs to be on people. So, those guys will learn it, but you hope that's the adjustment they bring forward, is understanding, okay, what the situations call for.
It'll make for an interesting year. For those that don't know, the NCAA approved that eligibility extension due to COVID and whatnot. So, and this is for all teams in the country, all bets are off on who you might see in the lineup this year from school to school. People, kids are not going to be on the hook for their eligibility for this season. So, kids like Gerrit Nijenhuis and other freshmen, true freshmen that we saw at this tournament, they could find themselves right into the lineup this year. And so it's an interesting situation to get to see some guys like Gerrit out in Omaha compete this past weekend, and then look at the potential that they may find their way into a lineup this winter or spring.
Yeah, no doubt. It's kind of it's a free roll of the dice, although you don't want to look at it that way, right? I mean, I caution against that. I think that's an easy attitude to take, but you don't want to do that, because and I mean it from this standpoint, if you start to devalue things because you think it's a free shot, things slide inevitably, right? Like you get lax on things because you're just like, it's a free shot. It doesn't really matter. No, this all matters. Like this all matters. This day to day, what we do matters. How we prepare, how we think, how we eat, it all matters, and it's all building for the future. It just depends. Are you disciplined enough to do it? And so, when we talk about, I know that's not exactly what you meant.
Correct.
But it's where my head goes. You can lose your room really quick if you get slack on it. You start letting things that normally wouldn't happen because it's not as big. You're gonna be in trouble. With both their development, as individuals as well as maybe your team. So it all still matters. And so, like I said, even though I know that was not your point.
No, that was not my point at all.
I want to make it abundantly clear, like it's.
I was actually more looking at it from an opportunity standpoint.
Yes.
Of these kids, so many kids come in and redshirt their freshman year because they're not ready. Yep. Just the opportunity from a coaching standpoint of being able to see what guys have right out of the gates. And from a student athlete standpoint of these kids, you don't have to worry. I mean, you don't have to worry about it. Go out there and see what you can do. Go out there and throw caution to the wind and put it on the line and say, I'm ready, coach. I'm ready to step up and be the guy at this level. So I think it's going to be, and not just in our room, I think nationwide, looking at who may find their way onto the mat this year could be really interesting.
No, absolutely. That part of it is true. Like these kids get an opportunity to compete maybe sooner than they would have ever. And then you got to value it, right? Mm-hmm. Like you got to value it. It's got to be important, and you got to be excited about those opportunities. So that is what I hope, these young men will look at it like, should they be in there, where maybe they were thinking red shirt coming in. And now, like you said, it's just kind of a free year in those terms. You've got to still embrace it. You got to get ready, and say, hey, I'm still in there to get everything out of this year that I can. Not that it's just a trial run and it doesn't matter.
100%.
Well, and like you said, every team's going to approach it differently. I mean, even more micro than that, I think it's going to be a different approach for every guy because the redshirt development year is a thing. because some guys just really need that physical development. You know, they need that year in the college weight room. They need that year with college nutrition.
Yep.
They need that kind of thing. And you don't want to take somebody who's almost ready and throw them to the wolves and you know, maybe break them in a way that they can't be fixed quickly in that first year.
Yep. No, I absolutely agree with that. Everybody is different, you know what I mean? And you've got to handle them as individuals. You know, you want to try to be fair about it, right? Like,
right.
That's kind of always my mantra is, you know, we're not going to treat everybody the same because everybody's different individuals, their needs, how they compete, what's going on, but we'll try to treat you fair and, you know, get you going down the path that's going to serve you best.
Yes. Not the only wrestling that went on this weekend. We had another showcase and you brought him up earlier. And so, Jordan Burrough went out and competed in another FloWrestling showcase and showed everybody why he's still the king.
Yeah, impressive to be down early big like he was, you know, which even surprised me a little bit. Like, you know, JB's been down before, but Zahid looked very strong early. You know what I mean? I mean, still very athletic. The duck that he kind of hit,
that duck, you know, was nasty.
Right, he disappeared quick, you know, for a big man who can still move like that. And then JB hit his double, had a good look at his double a couple times, and just kind of ran into the hips and got stymied or, you know, and stopped. You're like, wow, you know, Zahid's here. You know, he's not backing down. But then, as you know, it often happens, that pace that JB has learned to establish, right, forcing guys to react to everything. Started to take over, and probably around the 4-minute mark, you know, I would guess if you know, go back and watch it really close, is when the tide was really starting to turn in that match heavily in terms, you know, of Jordan's favor. So, you know, the guy's still really fun to watch. I texted JB after the match and said, hey, you are really still fun to watch, you know, congrats. And at the same time, you look at a young guy like Zahid and, you know, he should take a lot from this if he's willing to sacrifice and now and up what those last 2 minutes or so are going to look like. He found out this is what pace and really wrestling and defending hard looks like. And I've got to kind of, you know, add to the number of minutes that he can do that, because clearly he's got the skill set and came ready to compete. You know, I wouldn't say anything negative about how the last 2 minutes even went with Zahid. He competed hard. He's just learning maybe what it's going to take to beat somebody like that and the kind of pressure that is involved in those 6 minutes.
How much, you know, you said the 4-minute mark is when the tide started to turn. How much of that do you think was JB's pace and how much was veteran savvy?
Well, it's both, but it's that pace and using, you know, his quickness and what happened in the first 3 to 4 minutes to set up the last couple, right? So I think it all goes together. I mean, JB being savvy doesn't work if he's not in shape. If he's not in tremendous shape, he cannot continue to keep that, you know, they go hand in hand. So I really look at it like it's twofold, you know, because how often do you see, and this probably even has happened to JB, you know, I guess I don't want to speak for him too much, but, you know, there's probably matches he's lost where, you know, he's savvy and he was a better wrestler than when he was young and he won, but maybe he didn't carry the pace in the match like he should have. You know what I mean? Maybe he didn't do that. And so he's like, I have to carry pace. So I think they both go hand in hand. You can be savvy all you want, but if you don't have the shape to carry out the game plan, you know, it's not going to work either.
I think it's so interesting at this level. You get a guy like that.
Can't he just pick one, Cory? Can't he just pick one? Why does the answer always have to be both?
I know. Very indecisive.
I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I just, you know.
That's the book on Coach Ersland. He's very indecisive. He has trouble having a take.
Make a decision, man.
Listen, dude, the mantra in the room is wrestle hard, wrestle smart. Okay, which equates to be savvy and be in shape. Okay, so I am not deviating off of my philosophical beliefs at this point in time.
Okay, fine.
He wants all things at all times.
Yes,
Cory, again, Cory, I apologize for interrupting you, but
you're good. You take a guy like JB, and you know, obviously he's had the ultimate success at the highest levels. so he knows how to win. We all get that. That's the dumbest thing I've said all day. But he's also had.
There's lots of time left, bro.
I know. Well, yeah. He's also had failure at the highest levels, and in a very public settings. And like you said, Tony, to be able to learn from that, you learn from the wins, of course, but to be able to learn, okay, what's my takeaway from this loss? How can I use this to make me better next time? How can I make sure this doesn't happen again? What do I need at this level that maybe I didn't need at college to still win a couple national championships? Like that, is that really the difference at that level, is being able to just, glean whatever little ounce of new information you can, no matter what the result?
Yeah, no, I think you're right, especially when you say ounces even, right? Because it comes down to those marginal or incremental things that make the difference as you move up in levels, right? Mm-hmm. One mistake can cost you big. Max Lyon, made a couple, but you get caught in a trap arm gut and, the match is over and you're wondering, oh, man, I didn't even get a chance to really get going. I didn't get a chance to wrestle so those things get magnified. And I think, credit to JB's character. He's learned from those, right? As you said, he's had heartbreak on the biggest stage, mm-hmm. but he's got that character to kind of stand up and come back and fix it. It's not defined him. So, that's what you want in all of your kids. You don't want it to, a loss to just define you. I think we've said this before, so I'm going to repeat it again, but I know it's worth saying for the kids is you want guys to evaluate themselves just on the performance, and the win and the loss doesn't always take care of that. The heartache from a loss will probably drive you quicker to fix something, right? Yeah. And it takes the sting in your butt to get off your butt sometimes, to fix maybe a bad habit or the diet or whatever it is that little thing that's holding you back. Then hey, if I won, because you can always fall back and say, well, I won. So that eases the pain of you still look terrible. Yeah. Okay. You didn't move your feet, or you didn't wrestle in this position. And what you're striving for is that these people can evaluate themselves, and no matter what happens, you still have the will and the smarts to go fix it. That's what my hope is. You don't come back from this weekend. We didn't have anybody win a championship, mm-hmm. right? Some guys wrestled well, but hey, we got stuff to fix, and you want to have that kind of mentality, I guess.
I think the other thing we were talking before we started recording, which is when we have our most fun conversations, I think, sometimes. The other thing that I think is fascinating is when you watch this, you don't just, you're not watching this as a fan, these showcase events. You're watching this as a coach, and you're gleaning whatever you can take from this to bring it to the room on Monday. What were a couple takeaways that you had that, from watching that competition?
Yeah, no, you watch what pressure, what pace, does to people, really good people. What nobody's immune. Zahid is a tremendous wrestler. He's probably going to do tremendous things right in the future. To me, I'm more convinced of that after watching him compete against JB. Yeah. But so what you end up taking away is, okay, what that pace and that position and that persistence in the match does to good people, which we're trying to win national titles. It's going to take that kind of pace, that kind of persistence, that kind of position. So you're really watching what that does, and you're pulling examples and showing your kids. But then more than that, even you're thinking about ways to create those situations in your room. Everybody doesn't have JB in their room, right? And so now, okay, how do we create situations, though, to mirror pace and what the position that's going to be required, and then you institute it in your wrestling or your situations that are you rotating guys on to keep the pace high? Are you giving them things to do to certain kids to give them looks that is going to be needed, right? Then it's going into the room. So you're always watching, or at least I am. I'm sure everybody is. That wants to be, worth a dang, I guess. You're watching, how can I institute these things and create these situations that will push our kids to be, rise to that level.
Yeah. Lots of good wrestling this weekend, man. It was fun to watch. It was fun to watch all the matches out at U23s in Omaha, and then it was fun to be able to tune in on Saturday night and watch some of those guys. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Oh man, two big ones.
Man, I hate doing that in the middle of the show. But it's we're getting closer to the college season. We're hoping to get some more news soon there, and we're hoping to be able to keep this all going and get to see more of the Boilermakers on the mat. There, I know I can say it. Here in the reasonably near future.
Yeah.
Cory alluded to talking about some things before we got on the show. Cory and Tony and I often like to talk about our TV programming and what's next on the queue. Anything good you've had lately, Coach?
No, well, the only thing I expressed to you is I watched that movie, The Gentleman, on whatever channel you guys told me it was on. Maybe it was Showtime.
I don't know what it was on.
I don't recall either, and I couldn't tell you.
Can't figure it out.
I was not a good friend. I couldn't even direct you in the right direction. But those are some things I enjoyed. I know Cory had been watching Sons of Anarchy again. I'd seen that one time through. That's something I'd definitely go back and watch twice. Even though there's a lot of personal heartache, you watch that, you come out a little beat up yourself.
Yeah.
But it's I'll tell you, there's just less time for that right now. We're on virtual school for a couple weeks, and I'm going to get off this call and I'm going to go start learning how to subtract decimals down to the thousands place, with 10-year-olds. So I may not get to a new TV show in the next week or two leading into Thanksgiving break, boys.
It's a funny misgiving right now in the fact that they, with COVID and e-learning and people at home, they're like, you have more time at home and more time to do stuff. And sometimes it actually really feels like the opposite. You feel like you have less time because there's these different wrinkles and stuff going on that are happening, with kids getting sent home from school and so on and so forth. The Gentleman's on my list of things to watch. I'm a big Guy Ritchie fan.
It's classic Guy Ritchie, no doubt.
And I like
he gets back to his roots.
Lock, Stock is a good one. Snatch is a good one. A less known one, Rock and Rolla, is one that I always really enjoyed.
Pretty good, yeah.
With Gerard Butler. Oh yeah, Gerard Butler, Idris Elba. Tom Hardy has a small role.
Tom Hardy.
Oh, really?
Tom Hardy's in everything.
Oh yeah.
Tom Hardy's great.
There's a lot of that's the thing about his movies is that he casts them with just tons of really good people.
Mm-hmm.
He gets everybody to come in, and the way he weaves all those stories together and brings it all together at the end is always incredibly entertaining to me. So that one's on my list. That one's on my list of ones to watch.
I'm needing a new show, so we'll crowdsource that. Any suggestions you might have, throw them in the comments, or
we'll take them.
Send us a message. Before we go, I did want to wrap up, put a little bow on last week's show to an extent. Got some great news from our friends over at the Open Mat. They did a cool thing for the first time, I guess, where they ranked social media efforts for signing day for 2020, and your Boilermakers come out on top. There's a great little write up over at the Open Mat. It's not behind a paywall, so feel free to go check that out.
Free read.
Very cool. Some I know Tanner very good at passing the buck. Of course, it starts with having a great class, Tony. But
I told him yesterday.
This guy with no hair and the goatee did most of the heavy lifting on these social efforts, and major kudos to him.
Yes, well, no, and props to both of you, right? Obviously, yes, Tanner did a tremendous job starting with all of the different things, as well as everyone in graphics moving on up through. There's a lot of people involved. It does take a village, but I know you two in particular have put in a lot of time with what we did with the podcast and having the kids on, and so I'm grateful to be surrounded by tremendous people who do love the sport and are willing to sacrifice, as we said, time, which is even more precious than ever. I do appreciate your guys' efforts, as well as everybody here in Purdue Athletics to help make that a special day for these kids, who are getting ready for the next level.
Yeah, our guy Earl Smith over at the Open Mat. We appreciate his coverage of the sport and his attention to the Boilermakers. He and I were discussing it, and signing day is just, and it's not just a day anymore, right? It's a whole period. It's a week. It's a, whatever. It continues to change, but it's such a huge deal to me because it's an opportunity for young men to realize a dream. These kids are signing scholarship offers. They are officially becoming part of a college wrestling program, which for a lot of these kids that's the ultimate achievement of the sport. Like, I know that, we have the Olympics and we have world titles and stuff in freestyle, but, it's not like other sports where, you have a professional league to go to after. That's the penultimate for those kids. They get to go on and be in the NFL or the NBA or whatnot. For a lot of people who compete in wrestling, the biggest stage is the NCAA Division I scene. And even then, the Big Ten is the ultimate. Yep. That is their NFL. That is their NBA. That is their Major League Baseball. And so getting to see those kids put pen to paper and make it official, they've worked their whole lives to get to this point. I feel obligated to celebrate that at the highest level.
Definitely.
And so, whatever we can do, and we're always looking, pardon me, we're always looking for new and exciting ways to do it every year, to showcase these. And it's not just in wrestling. Like, we're talking about all sports, because it's the day and the week, it extends across multiple platforms. But, like, getting to show the world that these kids have achieved their dream and that they have chosen to continue their future at Purdue is such an exciting thing to me. Like I said, I feel as though I feel obligated to celebrate them at such a high level. And so I appreciate the kind words from Earl and from you guys as far as, how we did it. And I think, it makes me really happy to know that other people think that we're celebrating this at the level that it should be.
Yep. No doubt.
So, hats off to Ben and Stoney and Dustin again. They made it a really easy signing day. They made my job easy because they've done so many great things and they're such good kids that they made it really easy to celebrate them at that level.
A lot of good stuff this week, guys. We're gonna leave it there if that's cool with y'all. Beautiful. We're gonna circle back. Short week next week with Thanksgiving. We'll see if we can get maybe a short show together for you for if you plan to do any traveling to listen to on the way to Grandma's house. So
there you
go. That's gonna wrap it for this week for Tanner and Tony. I'm Cory. Thanks for joining us as always. Boiler up.